Guys, if you're watching, look at this amazing robe I just got. It's so cute. We'll talk more about it in the back end section because, first of all, you guys really like the Hot Take Hotline. So look at who's here. Our first guest. Please welcome our first guest of the InSync podcast, my new play phone for the Hot Take Hotline. The takes are going to be even hotter. Welcome back to InSync with Alexi, your new favorite podcast. I know it's your favorite. Don't lie. I know it's your favorite. Share this episode with someone you love or hate. And please give me 5 stars wherever you are. And guys, seriously, I want to get real for 2 seconds. Please leave me a comment wherever you're listening because I really want to get to know you guys better. I think it's so fun building a community and I love getting to know more about you guys. So leave me a comment wherever you're listening and please give me 5 stars, rate, subscribe, review, share, XYZ. Hello. And so many of you liked the mullet podcast format. So if you don't know, now you'll know. It's where we do business in the front, party in the back. Okay. Business in the front, party in the back. You know, Theo Vaughn's got a pretty good mullet now that I think about it. But he's probably the only person in my life who I know with a mullet. Well, I don't know him, but you know what I mean? Theo Vaughn, if you're watching, which I know you aren't, great work. Loved your Mark Cuban interview. Very, very cool stuff. The Mullet podcast, we do business in the front, party in the back. So if you want to stick around for the fun after party, you know where to find us. And if you're just here to get down and dirty with the business, then let's get right into it. Okay. Today, we're diving into 2 urgent and intertwined crises impacting voters. One driven by natural forces and the other by political forces. We're talking about Hurricane Helene's devastating impact all across the Southeast, especially as early voting is already underway in some of those states, and Arizona's controversial citizenship law, which could either disenfranchise over 100,000 voters or sow extreme distrust in our election outcomes and electoral systems. Both of these crises highlight just how vulnerable our electoral systems really are, whether it's from rising seas or restrictive laws, and the urgent need to protect the right to vote. And what's at stake? I mean, like, we are not just talking about individual elections here, you guys, but honestly, I think the health of our democracy as a whole. So let's get right into it and explore how these 2 events are really impacting our voting systems, but also, and I think more importantly, what we can do about it. Putting my glasses on so we can get a little bit more into it. No, these topics are obviously serious, and I just want to get into them as I'm like in a robe. Let's start with the reality that we can't ignore. Climate change is here, and it's reshaping every single aspect of our lives, including elections. Over the past 4 decades, natural disasters like hurricanes, wildfires, and floods have tripled in frequency. Elections are no exception to the fallout that comes with those kind of numbers. I was researching for this episode, and literally between 2019 and 2024, so this year, at least 23 countries around the world have had their national or subnational elections disrupted by climate-related disasters. And I mean, think about how many countries are voting. Over half the globe's population is voting this year. I mean, the stakes are huge. But today, like I said, I want to focus specifically on Hurricane Helene. Guys, Helene's path of destruction didn't just destroy homes and businesses. It has upended the ability for thousands of people to vote. I mean, think about it. In states like Florida and North Carolina, which, by the way, early voting has already started, entire communities were displaced just weeks before a presidential election. Imagine the chaos unfolding. Polling stations submerged, roads washed away, voter registration documents completely soaked and unreadable, if you even know where they are after a flood. People are struggling to survive, and that understandably makes voting a distant second priority. Let's put ourselves in their shoes for just a second. If you've ever felt stressed about losing your ID or being unsure of your nearest polling location, now imagine the stress magnified by a hurricane that has destroyed your home, your life, everything you knew. That's what so many voters are facing right now in the aftermath of Helene. We don't even know the full impact yet. I can just imagine situations in which people would have to drive miles and miles and miles in a state like North Carolina, for example, to find a polling location. And that's if they're even up to voting. Climate change is disproportionately affecting the most vulnerable communities. And that's worth mentioning in this larger discussion, too, because they're communities that are usually already facing systemic barriers to voting. Low income families, communities of color, and neighborhoods with maybe more immigrants, for example. Those folks bear the brunt of these disasters and often have the hardest time recovering, much less making it to the polls. So, what are election officials doing about it? I don't want to get too doom and gloom. And some areas are actually stepping up with innovative solutions. Just look at California, where wildfires have unfortunately become the norm. Election management bodies there have developed pretty comprehensive contingency plans, things like emergency absentee voting procedures, mobile polling stations, even vote by mail systems that are specifically designed to adapt during crises. But the reality is that most states, especially those in hurricane prone regions, are lagging behind. Florida and North Carolina are going to be scrambling to create emergency voting centers after Helene. And those efforts are, of course, going to be last minute and chaotic. There's a dire need for forward thinking planning where we can actually anticipate these natural disasters that have become more and more common instead of just reacting to them after the fact. Okay, now let's shift to Arizona. In Arizona, voting rights are under attack, but in a different way, not by hurricanes. Instead, it's a law, a 2004 law that requires proof of citizenship in order to vote in state and local elections in Arizona. It's a weird law that has faced tons of legal battles, but it's been on the books since 2004. Okay. And after a bunch of legal challenges, the state implemented this weird, complex dual registration system, one where voters who can't or don't provide proof of citizenship can only vote in federal elections, so president and Congress. There's a really important abortion ballot initiative that would enshrine reproductive rights into the state constitution in Arizona. Obviously, positions like Secretary of State and governor matter hugely. But the situation is that the top Democratic election officials in the state have found that roughly 100,000 voters who haven't provided proof of citizenship but are legal residents of Arizona have been allowed to vote in federal elections and state and local elections, when in reality, they should have only been able to vote in federal elections. So, not weighing in on issues like abortion or the folks who are actually going to be the ones really changing your day to day life. This might sound like a technical issue or a legal situation, but the stakes are huge. Arizona is obviously a battleground state, and any disruption there could swing the election. Guys, do you remember in 2020, Biden won Arizona, big deal for Democrats, but he won it by less than 11,000 votes. That's a razor thin margin. Now, like I said, nearly 100,000 voters, many of those Republican. So that's already creating drama. Those folks could either be barred from voting in critical state and local races this fall because they lack the necessary paperwork to prove their citizenship, or they'll get to continue weighing in on those things as they, it seems like, have been for the last 2 decades. And the law on the books isn't actually being enforced, and distrust in Arizona's election outcomes will be so high. I mean, and like I said, these folks who are affected, they're still allowed to vote in federal elections. So it makes this situation even more confusing. Think about the frustration of being told just weeks before, okay, that you can vote in a presidential election, but not in the local and state races that will directly affect you and your community. It's like being told that your voice matters in theory, but not when it counts the most. And this confusion, combined with the logistical nightmare of providing birth certificates or other documents just weeks before an election, creates an enormous barrier for everyday people. Particularly, like we talked about, immigrant communities or low-income families who may not have easy access to these documents in the first place. I'm going to read a quote to you from Governor Katie Hobbs. She's a Democrat, and what she said, according to reporting from the Washington Post. Quote, "When this goes public, it is going to have all of the conspiracy theorists in the world coming back to relitigate the past 3 elections, at least in Arizona. It's stressful, and there are no easy answers or solutions. And they're trying to figure out how to make this right without disenfranchising voters or without adding to the constant noise from conservatives who have already been laying the groundwork for a rigged election. Trump himself has already been saying that if he loses the election, it's because of people who, voted illegally and cheated. I mean, remember also after the 2020 election that Trump and his crackpot lawyer allies and others were falsely claiming that thousands and thousands of illegal, undocumented immigrants had voted in Arizona, and that's why Democrats won. Those claims were never proven. But now this law and this messy situation could further erode confidence in the system. Also, there's usually no room for nuance in any of these conversations, but especially when voting has become such a partisan issue. So let's connect the dots between these two things, because I promise you that they're intertwined. Stick with me. At their core, they both represent Hurricane Helene and Arizona's weird citizenship law. They both represent different ways that voters are being blocked from the ballot box. And they are prime examples of how eventual questioning of the election outcome will have all these different tentacles because of these situations happening in battleground states. Whether it's a natural disaster displacing voters or restrictive laws creating artificial barriers, the end result is the same: less access, fewer voices heard, and a democracy that is frankly becoming increasingly more fragile. Okay, so let's talk about some potential solutions and next steps, because I think that action is important with knowledge. First, I think we need better election resilience plans for dealing with climate change. States need to follow the example of places like California, where election officials are actively planning and preparing for natural disasters with things like mobile polling stations and absentee voting strategies. Other states should totally invest in similar contingency plans before the next hurricane, wildfire, or flood strikes. Second, guys, we need to push back against confusing laws like Arizona's. Voters deserve clarity, not confusion about their rights, especially when the elections could not be more important than they have become. And frankly, I think election officials should be more focused on making voting easier and restoring trust in our systems especially in battleground states where every single vote matters. The bottom line, guys, our democracy is only as strong as our ability to vote. If we allow natural disasters and restrictive laws to disenfranchise voters, we're letting democracy erode before our eyes. So let's stay engaged, stay informed, and as always, stay in sync. Okay, I fully acknowledge that I look like the dude from the Big Lebowski in this, but in the best way possible. We're going to do a quick fit check for those watching. And if you're not watching, like, pull over or make sure you save this later and watch on YouTube because it's great. Is this not the best robe you've ever seen in your life? This is the best robe I've ever had. I'm so happy. I don't know. I love robes. Okay, I'm such a robe girly. Anytime I kind of want to stand. No. Okay. Anytime I'm at a hotel, I get right into the robe immediately. Like I disrobe and get into the robe at a hotel as soon as I walk through the doors. As soon as I walk through, I am in that white robe. Love a robe with a hood. Shout out to the Ace Hotel. They have great robes. But this one is from some Australian brand called Homey, Hommey. Not sponsored, obviously. They have no idea who I am. I just bought it for myself because the only robe I had was this beautiful pink plush robe, an UGG robe. So it was like very soft and whatever. But my ex gave it to me. And like, I'm kind of in this phase in my life where I just want to purge everything that I have that reminds me of like past relationships or exes. And so, unfortunately, because it's a nice robe, but fortunately for my spirit and vibe and like universe, I have swapped out the old with the new, and this is the result. These colors, I've literally never seen these colors together, and I think they're so good together. I'm obsessed with it. Whatever. I think they're great. I think it's great. I want it in every color. My only suggestion would be for them to make some with a hood. That would be even better. Um, anyway, you know who's not going to be wearing a robe anytime soon? Eric Adams or Diddy. Neither of those men will have robe time or relaxing time. I don't think there are robes in prison. I actually don't know. Are there robes in prison? That'd be crazy if so. I don't think so, though. Does anyone know? Please let me know. Probably not. Hot take hotline. Yeah, it's me. Rikers, not Rikers. Rikers, you need robes. Okay, bye. No, but actually, I do think that we'll talk about prison reform another time. We'll talk about prison reform another time. Obviously, a serious topic. The Eric Adams stuff made Twitter so great. Twitter was so fun for a couple of days. Like, would just wake up and hear Zach giggling at tweets. And then, of course, like he just would share all the best ones with me. So many good Eric Adams tweets, you guys. Also, please, okay, guys, for real, it's crazy that Donald Trump was saying that Biden and Kamala Harris are mentally impaired. Literally, he said that at a rally over the weekend. He said they're mentally impaired. He's our hot take caller of the day. Hello. What? You'll be who is it? Oh, DJT. Okay, great. You said you'll be the oldest president in history if elected. Got it. Okay. Okay, thanks. Bye. Our hot take caller of the day has an unhinged message. Please enjoy.
What she did, that Republican would be impeached and removed from office, and rightfully so. Joe Biden became mentally impaired. Kamala was born that way. She was born that way. And if you think about it, only a mentally disabled person could have allowed this to happen to our country. Anybody would know this.
It is rich, 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 rich AF. It is rich AF that Donald Trump has the audacity to say that the sitting vice president of the United States was born mentally impaired when he is clearly suffering from cognitive decline. And also, by the way, it seems very clear that he's suffering from untreated PTSD at the same time. 2 assassination attempts? Come on. My therapist brought this idea up to me recently, and I was like, that's actually very interesting. I mean, look at all the ways that untreated PTSD can manifest for people: mood swings, anger, outbursts, like paranoia, not sleeping as much. Those are just a few. That's a pretty lethal combo, if you ask me. A pretty lethal combo that I wouldn't necessarily think makes a very stable genius. So go listen to the first episode of this podcast because it's all about whether or not candidates over a certain age should have cognitive testing, whether it should be required for them to take and pass certain tests that would measure essentially their mental acuity. So please go watch. And thank you guys for being here. Happy Sunday. Happy weekend. Happy week. I hope you're listening. And guys, like I said, please leave a comment. I want to get to know you. So follow me on social. Leave a review, 5 stars. Mwah. Love you guys. Go get your robes on. Go get your robes on, kiddos. All right, fam, let's get our robes on. Honestly, perfect for football Sunday. I love football Sunday because I get to wear my robe all day and eat wings. We get hot wings from Wingos usually, and we usually get mini corn dogs and mozzarella sticks, and it's just the best. Also, sometimes I'll make this incredible pizza dip recipe. Guys, the pizza dip goes crazy. It goes crazy and it's so easy to make. So anyway, I'm going to let you go. Goodbye. Love you guys. Thank you so much for being here. Really do appreciate it. And be good to yourself and others. Thank you so much for being here. Mwah. Bye.